All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome officially to today's SANS webcast. Which SANS pen test course should I take? February 2018 edition. My name is Carol Auth of the SANS Institute, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Ed Skoudis, SANS Faculty Fellow, and Josh Wright, SANS Senior Instructor. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Ed.
Hey, thank you, Carol. I appreciate it. I'd also like to thank everyone who's joining us today. This is one of our webcasts in a series where we discuss various SANS classes and help answer that question that we get asked so often: which SANS pen test course should I take? The meat of this presentation will be Mr. Joshua Wright. He's going to give you some really great insights from a SANS class and some very practical, useful things. In this series, we've done one with Larry Pesci where he showed some amazing stuff on hacking Bluetooth from the SANS Security 617 course. If you haven't heard that one, you should. We did one with Mark Baggett where he talked about some incredible stuff with automating information security with Python from the SANS Security 573 course. And now we have this one where Josh is going to share some insights on mobile, and it's going to be really cool. So thank you, Josh, and thanks for everyone for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. So I myself do attend SANS courses. Sometimes I have the honor of being able to attend them inside the classroom. I have some extra time. Or I travel to a SANS event and I'm there not teaching, and I love to sit in classes and just listen and learn. One of my favorite opportunities to listen and learn from Josh Wright. Now, in addition to going to live SANS events, I also sometimes listen to on-demand SANS events. That's where it's recorded, but I can listen to the audio on my own and see the slides changing and all that kind of stuff and work on the labs and such. I learn a tremendous amount that way. I've taken SANS Security 660 that way, which is our advanced penetration testing and exploit writing class. So I love personally attending SANS courses, and I think many of you do as well. And the reason I love them so much is, well, the bottom line is the SANS promise. The SANS promise, put succinctly, is as follows. You will be able to apply what you learn at SANS the day you get back in the office. And I'm telling you, the stuff that I learned, even on these webcasts that we do here, I'm able to apply directly into my work as a pen test professional. But I got to tell you, deciding which course to take is not easy. SANS has over 65 courses in the SANS catalog. Plus, we have hosted sessions by various partners. So when you look at a big SANS event, like we have the one coming up in SANS Orlando, it's coming up in about 2 months. That's big. There's going to be 60-some courses there. Or if you look at one of the more medium-sized events, like we've got SANS Pen Test Austin coming up in Austin, Texas in about 6 weeks or so, there's still a dozen courses to choose from. So how do you know which one to choose from? I'd like to give you a couple of minutes with tips on how you can choose, my advice to you, and then we'll give you a sampling from some of Josh's greatest stuff from the SANS Security 575 course. So here's some ideas on choosing the right course for you. But before I get there, let me emphasize that we at SANS really take this seriously. We know that a lot of folks that come to SANS classes, this is a precious opportunity for them. They might only be able to take one SANS class a year. Maybe they could take more, maybe they could take fewer. We want you to get the most out of it. So let's move to the next slide. So how can you get the most out of it? Well, these are your considerations. First, what's your background and current skill level? Are you very new to the information security space, or are you a veteran? Have you been doing this quite a while? If you look, there's a bit of a signal in the course number associated with that. 400 level courses are more introductory. 500 are for people who've been doing this maybe a year to 3 years. 600 courses are for people who've been doing it more or who are more advanced. And then we have one 700 course. It's the 760 course, which is really advanced penetration testing. So think about your current skill level. Next, what do you want to do? Where do you want your career to emerge? Where do you want it to go in the future? What new skills will allow you to provide more value to your employer? It's all fundamentally about business value. And then what does your boss want you to do? You might want to sit down with your boss. When you have the opportunity to take a SANS class funded by your company, your boss has certain needs and ideas of what he or she is looking for you to bring back. It's that SANS promise again. Talk with your boss Get advice from her or him on what they think you should be building your skills toward. And then the bottom line here is what skills are needed to achieve your goals and your boss's goals. We're talking win-win here. And really write these down. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Ed, you sound weird today. This is not how Ed Skoudis normally sounds. And the truth is, I have a cold. I've had a cold for about a week. I'm getting better. So I apologize if I sound a little strange. But it doesn't change the fact that you should sit down with your boss, discuss the goals that you have and what you can get out of a SANS class for those goals. You should also think about how important certification is. Many SANS courses have an associated GX certification. For example, the SANS Security 575 course on mobile device security and ethical hacking has a certification called GMOB. This is for mobile, GMOB, some people call it. If you find that you've chosen the wrong course, this is a really important thing. When you're sitting in a SANS class and you find that this isn't the right one for you, maybe you're taking it at a live event, or maybe you're taking it in on demand, and you get through maybe a quarter day's worth of materials, or even a full day's worth of materials. You say, you know what, this one's too easy for me. I need something more advanced. Or you might say the opposite. This one's way over my head. I need something more introductory. We are happy to make that change for you. Seriously, if you're in a live event, there's other courses to choose from at that live event. We're happy to move you into one of those other courses. We want to fulfill that SANS promise for you. Or if you're in on demand, they'll change you out to another course. Now, please try to do this in day one or day two of the course materials, because a lot of these courses build from day one, day two. I know this happens for 575 a lot. So if you try to make an idea or try to make a change when you're on day 3 or day 4, it can be hard to get caught up with the materials. So within day 1 or day 2 at the latest, make a call. This course isn't right for me. I want to take the right course, because really we want you to get as much as you can out of this precious opportunity to take some really wonderful courses from really fantastic instructors like Mr. Josh Wright, who's looking quite great in that picture, I might add. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, we have a brand new thing. It's been out maybe, I don't know, 4 months or something like that. It's a new course roadmap, and it is designed to help you pick your classes. If you want the fancy one that's all animated, go to https://www.sans.org/roadmap. This will give you the animated one where you can click and things like open up, and it's really cool. If you like a static image, you can certainly get one. It's at sans.org/media/security-training/roadmap.pdf. You see, we make the animated one the easy one to get to. The other one's a little bit harder. So the flow is generally speaking across the page from left to right. You'll see that we have blue for defensive kind of stuff. We have red for the offensive stuff that I like so much. We have black for digital forensics and incident response. Security management is in green. We have development and secure coding in orange, and industrial control systems, well, its blue looks very similar to the blue of cyber defense. But the general flow is across the page. You've got your core techniques here, and under core techniques, you'll see they've got SANS Security 401 and SANS Security 504. So 401 being security essentials, the essentials for defense, and 504 is on incident handling and hacker attacks. Its focus is sort of the essentials for the offensive side of things. So you start here on the left, and we've got 401 and 504, and then it builds in section 2 to get on focused job roles, and then on section 3 to get to crucial skills and specialized roles. So I'm going to advance it forward. If you were to click on focused job roles under penetration testing, we talk about some of the very essential penetration testing courses and some of the more advanced courses. You see here we have 2 courses under these essential ones and then 8 under the more advanced ones. And we talk in here using words that we hope you can use with your organization to understand the value you get out of SANS courses. You can click these little pluses to expand and get more detail. I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you click on the plus under the essential courses, you'll see for network penetration testing and ethical hacking, we have SANS Security 560. For web application pen testing and ethical hacking, we have SANS Security 542. Then if you want to get more in depth, you click on the plus associated with advanced penetration techniques, and you'll see things like 660 and 760. I alluded to both of those already. Advanced web app is 642. Mobile is 575. Great stuff in there. Wireless is 617. We also have a variety of other courses like 561 and 562, which are very hands-on. They're 80% hands-on. 573 is automating InfoSec using Python. Really cool stuff. So this is how you flow across the page. Then if you click on any one of these course numbers, you get all the details. It tells you the course, it gives you the syllabus, tells you what you get with the course, what to expect from it, and when it's being offered. Pretty cool stuff. And so if you were to click on, say, SEC573, it would say SEC573, automating information security with Python. And then it goes in there and tells you, hey, this is for penetration testers, but also cyber defenders and digital forensics people who want to learn how to do their jobs in a more automated fashion using Python. So you can look up any one of the SANS courses this way and get a lot more detail to help you make that right decision, because fundamentally that's what this is all about. And that's going to go ahead and move us now to Josh Wright's excerpt from SEC575. And we asked Josh, choose a part of the course that's really interesting, that is just totally following the SANS promise, as all of our courseware does, and that people can use to help better understand the security risks that they face. Josh came up with this section of the class, Reverse Engineering Third-Party App Platforms. It is awesome. So I'd like to turn it over to Josh. Josh, are you ready? Oh,
I am. Thank you, Ed.
I'm glad you're ready. Let's remind people, type in questions, whether it's about the 575 technical details you're about to discuss, or if they have any questions about any other SANS course in the pen test curriculum, they can ask those questions. At the end of this, Jason is going to run the Q&A, asking questions primarily of Josh, but also of me if they come up. So Josh, without further ado, please take it over.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you, everybody, for joining here today. Glad to have somebody here and to be able to talk to you guys. Jason, our marketing manager for the curriculum, posted this picture of me, and for some reason it looks like my finger is missing. I think I'm holding a remote, so it reminded me of the dad joke of removing your finger. So I put together that little animated GIF there just to remind everybody of how you can impress people with a finger removing gag. But Ed said, Josh, why don't you pick some material that reflects 575, that people will take something valuable away from and learn from. So the topic that I wanted to talk about today is reverse engineering third-party app platforms. So this is an area that I do spend a fair amount of time on in my job working at CounterHack. Right now we're working on a pen test for a customer's product, which has a mobile application component to it that's fairly sophisticated. And so we're going through the mobile application, we're reverse engineering it, we're trying to figure out what does the network traffic look like, what does the file system activity look like, what are the protocols, what systems is it talking to, things like that. But ultimately, we need to look at reverse engineering the app itself to understand kind of what are the secrets in the application? Is it disclosing sensitive information? What are some of the business logic rules embedded in the application that we could take advantage of and try to manipulate? So reverse engineering applications is something that I do as a mobile security analyst on a regular basis. But sometimes we get this kind of curveball. A lot of organizations today are building apps and they have to support iOS and Android, and then maybe even some other platforms on top of that. Instead of having two separate development teams, one for iOS, one for Android, a lot of organizations are building hybrid applications. So instead of writing their app in Objective-C or Swift for Apple iOS, or Java or Kotlin for Android devices, they use this hybrid third-party platform. And that allows them to write one code base, have one development team, but spit out an app for iOS and for Android and maybe even other platforms, Windows Phone and maybe some more obscure things like that. Now, I end up looking at a lot of these apps often, and when I started looking at these hybrid apps, it was a big mystery to me. I didn't know what was going on. I would hear names like Unity, Xamarin, PhoneGap, and others, and I didn't know what was going on, but it really wasn't that hard. I just need a little insight to figure out what was going on. Now, in this material that we're going to talk about, we are going to be looking at some code. Now, I think that you don't need to be a programmer to be able to do mobile device security assessments. You don't need to be a programmer to take a mobile app and pick it apart. But you do need to be able to look at code, and if you don't understand something, Google it. A lot of people get all hung up on, look, I'm not a programmer, I'm not, sometimes I hear people saying, like, they're being derogatory, I'm not a code monkey, I don't understand any of this stuff, I just want to hack mobile applications. Well, the way we get there is by looking at code. But you don't need to be a programmer to understand these techniques, and I think you'll find that if you're not a programmer, you're going to still get a lot of insight from what we're talking about here. You just need to be able to say, oh, I don't know what this thing does that I'm looking at, and then Google it up, read on Stack Overflow or something, an article, and then go back to your analysis. You do that a lot, and then you build up skills really quickly. Okay, so I'm going to show you analysis for a couple of techniques, but before I do that, using these same techniques, I found lots of interesting bugs, okay? I was looking at an application that wanted me to pay for full access to something. It was an online magazine, but by reverse engineering the application, I was able to get full paid access without actually paying for it. I'm going to show you a flaw in an application where messages are cryptographically signed, but you can manipulate the app so that you can actually post DMs or public messages from any user to any other user, and it appears completely legitimate without knowing their password. I've seen flaws where I've taken over server-side resources to upload and distribute my own files, and I'll even show you some flaws today where I found full Azure, AWS, Google Compute keys with full access to cloud infrastructure assets, okay? Understanding mobile applications is important because there's a lot of stuff that goes on there, and it can often expose other critical infrastructure assets. So it's not uncommon to find full Azure keys or full AWS keys in mobile applications if you follow the kind of techniques that we're going to be talking about in this material here today. So we're going to look at 3 examples. We're going to look at Unity, we're going to look at Xamarin, and we're going to look at PhoneGap. And we're going to start with Unity here. Now, Unity is not, I think, super widely known as a mobile app development platform, but it is widely known as a gaming platform. But sure enough, using Unity, a lot of organizations are saying, I need an app. It needs graphics. It needs like some animations. It's maybe some 3D kind of textures, things like that. And Unity does really, really well in that market, even if it's not a game, even if it's a utility app or even a shopping app in some circumstances as well. So if you want to build an app and you want to use the Unity framework, you can write your code in C# or Boo, which is like a Python-like language, or JavaScript, and then you spit out the application for Android, for iOS, and then it runs on that platform without you having to develop for just that specific platform. Now, when we get a Unity application, we want to start figuring out some information about it, like what's going on. And what I typically do is I'll just grab the Android version of the Unity application. It's easier for me to reverse engineer it that way because it's a little bit easier to get the Android package or APK file than it is to get the iOS phone archive or the IPA file. But generally, for all these tools, we start with the Android side, and then we still learn lots and lots about what's going on the iOS side because it's the same code base for both platforms. Here I'm looking at Pokemon Go, the APK for Pokemon Go, and APK files are just zip files. So I grabbed this APK file from apkmonk.com. That's apkmonk.com, just a free site to be able to download everything here. Sorry, I send that to everybody. Okay. Jason, could you resend that for me, please, so I can get that right? I grabbed this APK file from apkmonk going on here, and I just unzipped it. And when I unzipped it, I saw some things like Pokemon assets bin data, and this directory structure tells me that it's a Unity file. In addition, I see some libraries down here, libunity. Again, these are key indicators that I'm looking at a Unity-based application. So with Unity applications, the interesting code is distributed in the top-level zip file directory in assets bin data managed. In Unity applications, even though they're running on Android and Android is based off of Linux, they're actually distributed as DLL files. Now, normally you think of a DLL file as a Windows-based system, but Unity still uses the DLL file structure for Android applications. Now, what's really interesting about Unity and how they distribute the actual application is that it's distributed in what's called a Common Intermediate Language file, or a CIL file. Common intermediate language files are essentially what .NET applications use. And it's very similar to like a Java jar file. Now, if you've ever done reverse engineering of Java files, you know that it's fairly straightforward to take a Java jar file and turn it into reconstructed Java source code. Unlike a Windows PE file or maybe an iOS or Mac application, which when reverse engineered only gives you machine code, low-level assembly code, with Java and with any common intermediate language file, including Unity here, we actually get reconstructed source code like the developer would write it initially. Now for Unity, that means the reconstructed code is going to be C#, Boo, or JavaScript. And I would say 95% of the time, it's going to be C#. So it's fairly straightforward to take a Unity application and then reconstruct it back to a close approximation of that C# source code. So I wanted an application I could experiment with, and I was doing a project a little while ago where I took a bunch of Android applications that claimed to do ghost detection and claimed to commune with spirits or visualize spectral anomalies that could identify the presence of spirits in your area and things like that. One of them was this application called the Ouija app for Android. It was a $10 application, and you interact with the application like a Ouija board, and you ask it questions. And then the Ouija board responds back to you as if it's communing with a ghost in, in your dark room at night or what have you. So this is the application here, and I typed in, "What have you done?" And the little planchette animates, and it says, "That's for me to know and for you to find out." When I launched it, I saw the Unity kind of banner show up, so I knew it was a Unity application, and I wanted to find out, what does this app really do behind the scenes? So when I unzipped this Ouija APK file, I found a file called assembly-c#.dll. Now, because it's assembly-c#, I know this Unity application is written in C#, so what I need is a tool that reverse engineers C# Common Intermediate Language, CIL files, and turns it back into reconstructed C# source. And I'm going to talk about two tools that do this, but the first tool is called JetBrains Peak. It is a reverse engineering tool for .NET applications. It's meant for Windows, but it works perfectly well for Unity applications as well on iOS or even on the Android platform here. So this is JetBrains Peak. And all I did was, in JetBrains Peak is a free tool, by the way. You can get it for free. I installed it on my Windows 10 machine, and I opened that assembly-c#.dll, and you can see that right here. And instantly, it gave me all the root level references here. So I saw ouijai.ai, which I assumed meant artificial intelligence, and it had these classes, answer event args, replace words, Spirit AI. Okay, well, I'm just clicking. I don't know anything about this application so far. I'm just clicking my way. I click on Spirit AI, and .peak gives me all the reverse engineered C# source code. Now, I don't get comments from the developer. That's not included here. But I have all the original method, class, package, and variable names that the original developers used when they wrote the application. None of this is obfuscated or changed in any way. In fact, there was an expletive here that I had to black out because I thought that was not appropriate for the webcast content here, okay? So using this information, now I can look at C# source code and kind of figure out what's going on in the application. Now, it's not a perfect representation of the C#, but it's fairly close, and it's good enough for me to reverse engineer the application in very short order. So when I started poking through the application a little bit, and I'm just kind of clicking around, I'm looking at ChatterBot API over here on the left, and I see ChatterBot Factory, and I see here's a method called create, and then if the type is passed as a type here, is cleverbot, then it instantiates a new cleverbot object with this URL right here, or if it's type Jabberwocky, this URL, or if it's Pandora bots, it does this thing here. So that's interesting to me. Now, I didn't know this before, but it has a bunch of embedded URLs inside this Ouija board application. Cleverbot.com, Jabberwocky.com. I didn't know what those were, so I just browsed them. If you go to Jabberwocky.com, it looks like some cheesy AI thing from like the Apple IIc days, where you start talking and it AI talks back to you. So it asked me my name, and I said, "Are you a bot?" And it insisted on my name. It was a little pushy. And I asked it again, "Are you a bot?" And it said, "No, are you a bot?" So it's like a little cheesy AI chat conversation thing. Okay. Interestingly, it looks like the Ouija board application is taking the questions, sending it to Jabberwocky or ChatterBot or any of the other ones that it uses, and just encoding the response back on the device. And when I started testing it, I went back to my app, and on the planchette, I typed in, "Are you a bot?" And it responded, "I am not a ghost. I am as real as you," which was odd to me because I didn't ask it if it was a ghost. I asked it if it was a bot. But sure enough, continue looking at the source code, and there was a function here where anytime you use the word bot or clever bot or robot or anything like that, it picks a random word to replace it with, spirit, ghost, psyche, or soul, to try to give it that, I don't know, the spiritual kind of responsiveness here. Okay, so I'm going to call this app busted here. This is definitely not communing with spirits, but Unity applications, more to the point, can be really easily reverse engineered. Using tools like .peak, I can open up that DLL file and start pouring through that C# source to figure out what's going on inside this application. So that's Unity, and that was a lot of fun for me, but I've seen a lot of applications that are also written in the Xamarin platform. Now, Xamarin is actually a Microsoft-owned product. It's a cross-platform mobile development framework like Unity, but it's not specific for gaming. It's meant for more utilitarian applications, online shopping, utilities, simple applications, things like that. Xamarin is actually founded by Miguel de Casa, who is the author of the Mono open source.NET framework for Linux. So essentially what Xamarin is a port of Mono with an IDE for developing applications that port to iOS, Android, and several other platforms as well. Okay, Microsoft picked them up because it gave Microsoft a foray into the mobile development space, where now people who are .NET developers, typically running for Windows, can now start using the same skills they already have, but start spitting out iOS and Android applications as well. Now, the good news for us is that, like Unity, Xamarin applications are also distributed as those common intermediate language or CIL files. So we can use very similar techniques like we do for Unity to reverse engineer Xamarin applications as well. So the app that I chose to look for here, and basically what I did was I went to the Xamarin website and I looked for featured applications or top applications that are written in the Xamarin language, and one of them is called Tink. Now, Tink is a personal finance application. It's popular in Sweden and other European countries. Basically, you use Tink to monitor your purchases. You associate it with your credit card company, and now it gets one spot for multiple credit cards or multiple purchases. It connects to your bank information, so it can monitor your cash flow situation, how much you have savings, checking, in and out of all your finances, things like that. And you can manage all of your financial outlook from this one application. So a lot of access to very sensitive information. And although I don't use it, I wanted to find out how secure is this application. Again, I went to my website, not my website, my favorite website, apkmonk.com, to be able to get the Tink application really easily. And I unzipped it to a temporary directory here called Tink. Now, when I unzipped it, I see a whole bunch of information here. I see se.tink.android.beta.dll. That's probably going to be my analysis target. But I also see Mono, so it tells me that it's a .NET Mono application for Linux, or in this case, Android. MS Core Lib, which is also a .NET library, but libmonodroid here as well. This is actually the compiled runtime that turns that common intermediate language file into the actual low-level machines instructions that run on the Android device itself. Okay. So, strings is a tool that we talk about, fairly often in different SANS classes. And it's one of the early things that I'll do on some of these DLL files just to get some basic information about what's going on here. So I ran strings on this DLL file, and I just piped it to word count-L, and that counts how many hits are returned. And it returned 16,000 some strings, okay? Now, those are 4-character strings or longer. A lot of it's going to be garbage, so I could try to filter through that. But remember, because this is a .NET application, strings are not just going to be 7-bit ASCII strings. They're also going to be Unicode strings. And what's more, they might be Unicode big endian strings or Unicode little endian strings, depending on the platform and how the application was actually built. So unfortunately, the strings command on a Mac doesn't have this feature. You need the GNU strings, the strings that comes with the Linux box. But strings-EL sets the encoding to little endian Unicode. And when I ran that through word count-L, it returns 616 hits. Running it again for big endian Unicode, it returns 720 hits. If I had just run strings without -EB, I would have missed this interesting string that was the result here. So if you're using strings, great. It's an easy way to get really quick information and start looking at URLs and maybe keys and other strings that are inside one of these DLL files. But don't just look at ASCII strings. Make sure you look at little endian Unicode and big endian Unicode strings as well. This was a big endian Unicode string that looks really interesting to me. Now, this string to me jumps out as a base 64 encoded string. Why is it base 64? Because it's numbers, it's lowercase letters, it's uppercase letters. There's no equal sign at the end, but sometimes that's only present if there's padding in the base 64 encoded string, and there is no padding here. So I piped that string to base 64-D, decoded it and hex dumped it, and I get this value right here. Well, that was kind of disappointing because I have no idea what that is. It's an odd number of bytes. It's not any hash length that looks familiar to me. So I don't know what that is, okay? Sometimes strings will get you part of the way there, but not all the way there. So I needed to take what I know and I wanted to find that string. How is that string referenced? What's calling that string? How is that string being sent? Those are questions that I'm going to answer with reverse engineering. So earlier we saw JetBrains Peak, which is a reverse engineering tool, and I like that tool because it's quick and it's easy and it's free. There's another .NET decompiler called Telerik Just Decompile. The Just Decompile tool is also free, but there's a big feature in Just Decompile that I really, really like. Here, I opened that Tink DLL file with Just Decompile, and sure enough, just like Unity, it decompiled all of the original constructs for me, all of the classes, all of the methods, all of the variable names here, all these different values here. This is all very useful information for me, okay? But the reason I like Just Decompile is because if you click on the Tools menu here, you can export from Just Decompile into Android Studio into Microsoft Visual Studio, okay? So why is exporting into Visual Studio valuable to me? Because I can't edit this. This is a read-only copy of all this information. I can't annotate it. I can't add my own comments. I can't put a big thing at the beginning that says, this is a dead end, ignore this section. I can't rename variables into things that make more sense to me because it's a read-only copy. But with Just Decompile, I can go to Tools, Export to Visual Studio, and then open up that same data inside Visual Studio here. So this will not recompile. It's not a good enough decompiler where you can take a DLL, export it, open it in Visual Studio, and then recompile it and rip it off for your own. It's not that good, but it is good enough where now I can start editing and annotating this information. So for example, in Android Studio, I said edit find, I searched for this string and it brought me to this function, initialize apps flyer, okay? Now I can start adding my own comments here that helps me understand what's going on with the application. Apps Flyer is an online apps analytics server. I didn't know that before. I Googled it and I figured it out, okay? To do, investigate the impact of the disclosed key. So if we look at this, this is the output from the strings-eb command we saw, and it's using a library provided by Apps Flyer to set the Apps Flyer key. And then it's setting some information like the campaign, the origin, and it's registering it with this mobile application data analytics company. And I have the key to access that resource. Now, I didn't investigate it further. Nobody authorized me to do this analysis of the Tink application here, so I didn't look at anything on the Apps Flyer side of things. But if this were a pen test and I were authorized to do it, what I would do is then research, what can I do with that key? Can I submit falsified data to that app analytics server and then pollute the data that's being collected by the company? Can I manipulate the data? Can I turn off reporting for all analytics? Can I purge earlier reports and eliminate important analytic information? Now, we might be saying, well, analytic information is useful, but is it important? Yes, because that's how people get paid for ads. So it's a very important thing to be able to collect and have that information available. And if that is lost, that could be really, really damaging to the organization. Okay. So that was a great time for my printer decided it needed to self-clean itself. Sorry about that, okay? Sorry about that.
I think that was me. I think I'm hacking your office right now, and I accidentally. I apologize. I use the techniques I learned from you, if that helps. If that makes.
I await your message, Ed. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
All right, so we're going to finish up by looking at our last mobile framework for third-party app development platforms, and that's called Adobe PhoneGap, okay? So Adobe PhoneGap is based off of the open source library Apache Cordova. I see tons of applications written in PhoneGap. Now, PhoneGap applications are also released under very similar names: Mendix, Kony, Ionic, okay, or Ionic, okay? Those are all other PhoneGap-derived platforms, which are essentially just different IDEs on the same infrastructure, okay? So a lot of people are starting to develop mobile apps in PhoneGap because you write your application like a web page. You use HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, okay? And because there is so much comfort and familiarity and skill set with those three frameworks, PhoneGap becomes a really attractive platform for developers who want to start making apps for mobile devices. Now, with PhoneGap applications, essentially what's going on is the developer writes their application in IDE, but they're forming HTML pages with CSS and JavaScript, and then PhoneGap is just like a little kind of custom web browser that renders the content off of the actual server, off the mobile device itself. So all the content is stored on the mobile device, and then it's all rendered inside the application. One of the other nice things about PhoneGap is that it can export into a ton of platforms. Android, iOS, but also Windows Phone, the Samsung Tizen platform, which isn't too popular in North America, but is more popular in Asia. The Firefox OS, BlackBerry, and lots of other things that you probably don't care about as well. Lots and lots of people are starting to write for PhoneGap. So this is a great area to build skills for mobile application analysis. Again, I did my normal thing. I went to the PhoneGap website and I said, what are some of your top applications? And one of them is an application called FanReact. Now, I'm not really a sports ball person. I don't know much about sports ball things, but apparently this is an application where people share social anecdotes and accolades about sports ball. I don't know. It's about like text and pictures and sports things that I don't understand. But regardless of my not understanding the sports angle of it, I wanted to understand how this application worked and what it really did behind the scenes. So I grabbed the APK file, again from APK Monk here, and I just unzipped it. I unzipped it to a temporary directory, and when I unzipped it, you can immediately observe that it's a PhoneGap application, because you'll see things like Cordova. That's the Apache Cordova platform that PhoneGap is based off of. But more importantly, FanRack, that's the temporary directory I made, assets, www, www.css, www JavaScript. That is the application functionality. Unlike Unity or Xamarin, the actual source code, the JavaScript files, are distributed without encryption or without any other kind of obfuscation. So it's really, really easy to start reverse engineering these PhoneGap applications. Simply unzip and start looking through the JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So I did my normal thing here where I did a little grep, and I said grep recursively case insensitive using a regular expression for any line that matches pass or key or API or secret. Okay, and I did my little search here, and I just let it run on all of the source code, and I got a ton of hits back on that little search result. Okay, API key, this variable, and I've obscured this string here. Backend services API key. Okay, Twitter tokens for OAuth authentication. Telerik backend services. Okay, some API keys for services here, but this is the one that really bothered me. There. Amazon Web Services keys, secret access key, and AWS service key are all being openly disclosed in that JavaScript information here, ready, available for anybody to be able to see. Okay. Just for kicks, I did a search for SQL, and just because I thought it would be interesting, in these JavaScript files, there's all these execute SQL statements, which also tells me that it is SQL injection vulnerable as well, because a lot of this information is not being filtered in any way, and it's all being passed in SQL statements to a local database on the mobile application itself. So if you're able to man in the middle of the data, you could manipulate those variables and actually do SQL injection attacks against databases on the mobile device itself, not the upstream infrastructure. Honestly, guys, it took me 5 minutes to get to this point when I was doing the application evaluation. And at this point, I had to kind of stop. Although I'm really interested in what this AWS key gives me access to, that's where I felt like I was crossing the line in I'm not authorized to be doing this kind of testing. But for a customer on a pen test, oh yes. We would take that key and then we would start to enumerate what AWS services do we have access to. With PhoneGap, and again, this is FanReact here, there is no obfuscation. When you reverse engineer a Unity application, when you reverse engineer a Xamarin application, you're getting reconstructed C#, but you're not getting the original source. You're not getting developer comments and things like that. But with PhoneGap and related platforms, you get all of the developers' comments. So I didn't write this. This was written by whoever the developer was that wrote that application, which sure told me what was going on inside this code segment. And it just, gave me a lot easier of a time to be able to start to understand what was going on inside the application itself. Now from here, I'm able to recognize that I can upload arbitrary files to the server. I can, start using it as a content distribution point. If it were some kind of illicit thing, like uploading illicit content and then distributing it, that could go very poorly for the target organization here. The question comes down to, can you use PhoneGap securely? And PhoneGap and comparable frameworks can be used securely, but it's very difficult because a lot of applications are going to embed some sort of key, whether it's a data analytics services key or integrating with social networking to post, or if you have an application that integrates with vehicle services like Uber or Lyft or things like that, you're going to get keys from those other partner networks, and you're going to have to embed it inside your application. If that's the case, PhoneGap is really not the best way to go. Yet, it's not stopping a lot of developers, because I think a lot of people just don't recognize how insecure these applications are, or how simple it is to unzip, open up the JavaScript file, and then get all of the company's intellectual property through source code with original source code comments from the developer and everything else openly distributed in any app store. Okay. I wanted to talk about kind of a cohesive section here, and this is just one small excerpt from what we do in 575. In 575, we spent a lot of time talking about reverse engineering Android. We spent a long time talking about reverse engineering iOS. We talk about defending mobile devices themselves, but exploiting them, taking advantage of them. I just finished up a huge section on Android Oreo and iOS 11 and all of the new stuff that goes on there. There's, I think, some pretty unwise decisions that Apple made in iOS 11 that actually degrades the security of the platform that I think people aren't really aware of significantly enough yet. So there's a lot of stuff going on with these platforms, and for me, mobile is just this exciting field where things are changing constantly and there's always new things to learn, but it's these kinds of techniques, these kinds of tools, these kinds of processes which I find so useful, where an organization is publishing an application before it gets in the hands of the users. I'll take a look at it and find out what's going on. Or I have an application right now that I'm working on that controls something in your house through cloud services, through AWS and other online WebSocket brokers and things like that. And it's a fairly complicated piece. The way we understand what is actually going on in the whole system is by looking at the app and reverse engineering it using the very same techniques that we're talking about here. All right. And with that, I would love to be able to answer any questions on 575, other SANS classes, or reverse engineering things. I'd be happy to talk about all of them for as long as we have available.
Thank you, Josh. The first question is, do you have a link for Assembly Explorer?
Assembly Explorer. I don't know that tool. It sounds familiar, but I don't think it's one that we talked about here. We talked about just decompile and .peak. Both of those are really interesting, really easy to find. If you just Google .peak or just decompile, you should be able to get that really easily. Assembly Explorer, maybe it was a reference to an object in one of these applications here. I'm not sure, but it's not a tool that I use for mobile application analysis.
Okay. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask. Ed, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is 504 a good course to prepare you for 560?
It certainly can. It's not designed as such, but so the idea of 504 is it's on hacker attacks and incident handling techniques. And it is more for people who are newer to the industry than 560 is. That said, 504 is not a prerequisite for 560. I would suggest if you're brand new to the industry, though, go to 504. You'll learn hacker techniques there, plus some good incident handling stuff. But if you've been doing this stuff for a while and you want to dive into penetration testing, 560 is a good place to do that. So one is not a prerequisite for the other, but 504 is for people who are newer to the industry. 560 is for people who are more focused on penetration testing.
Thanks, Ed. This is a question I get often when I'm working at a conference or something. Is there any difference to the labs or to the content between being in a live classroom or being taking the course on demand? And either Ed or Josh can start, but both your perspectives would be great.
So Ed, I can talk about 575 here. So in 575, we use a virtualization platform that I'm really excited about. So before we had this platform, 575 labs were very difficult on the first day because there was so much you had to install, so much you had to configure, And a lot of it's just waiting, next, finish, and then do that over and over and over again. What we do now is we go to what we call the SANS Integrated Lab Platform. You log in, and in your web browser, you get Linux systems, Windows systems, Android systems, and all the tools are already installed. You get all those tools yourself as well so that you can install them on your own system later on if you want to. But for me, it's a great way to kind of optimize the lab. Plus, each of the labs come with step-by-step directions so that if you're new to the field and you're kind of not familiar with some of the tools and techniques, you can follow the steps and then say, all right, I'm going to do this step, do this step, do this step, and complete them all in order. Or if you're a little more advanced and you want more of a challenge, you could just hide those step-by-step directions and then get that challenge on yourself. Now, one of the beautiful things about this system, to answer Jason's question, is that it is identical for in-classroom and online students. It's the exact same experience in both modes of delivery. So this is, I think, a big win for 575 because no matter how you're taking the class, you're going to get the same lab experience everybody gets in the class.
That's a great answer. Let me focus more broadly than 575. One of the things that SANS really tries to do is to give those students who take the courses via on-demand the identical experience that they would get if they're sitting in the classroom, with the exception of the fact that you have more time when you take it in on-demand. You get 4 months to take it in on-demand. But SANS really strives to make sure that the quality of education that you get is the same. So when you take a class via on-demand, you get the same cheat sheets, the same book, you get access to the materials, you get VPN access to the target infrastructure, if there is one, which there is for most of the pen test classes. If there's LODS, the platform that Josh just described, in the live classroom, it's also in on-demand. And we also rank ourselves just as hard. I mean, from the quality measurement perspective, we're looking at the same quality measures in on-demand as we are in the live classroom environment. I will tell you that there is a certain luxury to on-demand because you have the additional time. 4 months to go through a class allows you to spend more time on those hands-on labs than you can in a 6-day class. You still get the same materials, you still get the same number of hours of classroom work, but that extra lab time when you can really go through on your own is tremendous. We also do shoot some additional videos in the studio. I know Josh has filmed some of these in the studio. I know I have. Mark Baggett has as well. Some additional animations and videos to help the on-demand students grasp the material better because they don't have the live instructor waving the hands. I'm waving my hands right now as I say this, but the live instructor waving the hands in front of the room. So we do some additional animations and such to help the on-demand students with that. But the goal, and I do think we're quite successful in achieving this goal, the goal is the same quality, the same learning.
Thank you, Ed. Another question that is asked often is if someone's never taken a SANS course before, either live or on demand, let's go with live first. What is the first day like for those new students? Do you have a perspective that you can offer?
I can tell you what I see in their faces. When we first start a SANS event, a live face-to-face event, there is a morning session called Welcome to SANS. It happens at 8 a.m. on the first morning. I know that's early for some people, but it happens at 8 a.m. I just did one last week in Scottsdale, and I love doing that morning session because 90% of the people who come, it's their first time ever at a SANS event, and they don't know what to expect. So some of the surprises people get, I think, are, wow, there's a lot of materials for the courses. You got cheat sheets, you got books, you got some posters that are put in your book bag. You get a whole bunch of stuff. I think you'll also see that there's a lot of new people. There's a lot of people that have never been to SANS before, and you meet them the first time when you get to this Welcome to SANS event. I also think that you will find that the instructors and the TAs are quite friendly. We really would love to hear from you. If it's your first time at SANS, tell us it's your first time at SANS. We want to make sure you're taken care of, that you feel at home, that you know where to go, what to do. And remember that Welcome to SANS, you'll also get to meet with other people who are brand new at SANS. And I do think that a lot of times people don't, when they're new to SANS, don't appreciate the social aspect of it. You're going to come and you're going to meet like-minded people. I tend to be kind of shy. I think Josh is kind of shy too. But when you're at SANS, you're with your fellow nerds. I mean, they're people just like you, people just like me. And there's a lot of evening sessions. There's always something going on. At some of the bigger events, we have Net Wars, so you can come and play Net Wars in the evenings. Even if you're kind of shy, there's still a ton for you to do and people for you to meet. That's my thoughts. Josh, what do you think? You probably got better stuff than I do on that.
I think, coming from other conferences, I'm always amazed at how well organized and how well run SANS conferences are. I think the first day of material is always interesting for me because I find that I'm learning things immediately in a SANS class, where in some other classes I feel like, even academic classes that I've taken, the first couple days or the first couple sessions is kind of review, things like that. But we really try to make every moment count and make all of that content that you're paying for as valuable as possible. As an instructor, as an author, that is my goal. I want every second to be useful in that class. So there is no, well, we're just gonna review things for the first day and a half to get everybody caught up. We really try to kick things into high gear immediately to make it as valuable as it can be.
Good call.
One other question is, I just lost it. So with Pentest Austin coming up in a few weeks, what could people expect for the nighttime activities?
Well, that's a big one for us. It's a special one. It's coming up. What's the dates on that, Jason? It's probably
March 19th to the 23rd.
Gosh, it's coming up soon. March 19th to the 23rd. That's a month and a week away. So there's two events each year where the Pentest curriculum tries to throw in a whole bunch of extra cool stuff. One happens in Austin, Texas, because it's such a great town with a lot of pen testing minded people. But we also welcome other people, cyber defenders, digital forensics folks. The other one that we do is Hackfest. It's in DC and it's in November. But for each of these events, what we try to do is cool, fun stuff in the evenings. We do extra Net Wars. So Net Wars is a hands-on event, capture the flag. It's like extra lab work, but it's fun. It's done in a way to sort of challenge you. You could play as part of a team if you want. Ad hoc teams, join a team if you want. You don't have to. And you have a chance at this event, the Austin event in March, to earn coins. You see, if you win the Capture the Flag event of your given SANS pen test class, you get a coin, a challenge coin that says that you did great. If you've taken SANS classes in the past, like 504 or 560 or 542 or 575, and you come to this Net Wars event, based on your performance in Net Wars, you can earn that coin. Maybe you already won one, you can earn another one. Or if you haven't, you can earn one. We call it Coinapalooza. The other thing that we do at Austin is we run an evening event based on our Cyber City, Cyber War Simulator. It's a physical city that is miniature. It's 6 feet by 8 feet in size. There's streaming video cameras, and there's various missions. You see, Cyber City comes under attack from cyber terrorists, and you have to apply your skills in both offense and defense to thwart the terrorist activities. And Josh Wright wrote a lot of those missions within Cyber City. So it's extra Net Wars with the chance to earn your pen test coins, and these coins are fun. Each coin's got a cool little logo on it, and then a cipher on the coin. And then you have your chance to participate in Cyber City. So that's what we do at Austin. We also do it in November at Pentest Hackfest.
Thanks, Ed. I just want to let everyone know they're going to receive an email from me when this webcast is available in the archive. I will also send some links that would be helpful. If they have any questions, they can always ask, and I will forward them to Ed and Josh. And I just wanted to let everyone know that that was going to happen, so that way when they got my emails, they didn't think they were being phished. Okay.
Nice.
Right. And with that, any parting words from Ed and Josh?
Josh, why don't you go?
Just to thank everybody for coming here today, and keep looking at mobile applications, keep asking those questions, and look forward to hearing from folks with any comments or questions on any of the stuff that we've covered here, or just in mobile in general. Always happy to hear from students and catch up on what cool projects people are working on.
That is such great advice. Great sound stuff. Thank you, Josh, for saying it. I wholeheartedly agree. I do hope folks will join us for the next one of these what SANS classes should I take? We're going to do a nice excerpt of real practical, useful stuff and talk through some more of this. But thanks, Josh. Thank you, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, guys. And back to you, Carol.
All right. Thank you so much, Ed, Josh, and Jason, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.